quite missed you. Yeah. Hopefully it's mutual. So, so we actually have we've got two open session items plus a supplementary item, so which is also in open. So I'm suggesting that maybe what we do is we obviously get Study Gold Coast in first, which as they're meant to, and then after that we'll deal with the smart city, and then deal with the supplementary item before we go into closed. So, Councillor Gates, I need to look at the screen.
Thanks, Chairman. This morning, for me to attend remotely, it's
Yes.
necessary to move
Yes.
the motion.
Yeah, Alicia just told me, yes.
Sure you were across that.
Yeah, no, thank you, yeah. So we do actually need a resolution to, as Councillor Gates said, to permit her to attend the meeting remotely. So if we can actually, Councillor Taylor, thank you, seconded Councillor Patterson. We've got the wording there on the screen. It's basically, that Councillor Gates be permitted to attend the meeting via audio-visual link. Okay, so if we can just take the vote on that, all those in favour, yes, we're happy with that. Okay, that is carried. So you're allowed. You're here.
And now
you're
you
in.
can vote, Donna.
Thank you. You haven't lost your touch.
All right. Now I just need to look at confirmation of minutes. Of course, is starred because there weren't really any because it went straight to council. But we still got to move that, haven't we? Yes. Yeah. So if we can actually get happy to move that as a start item. Councillor Young and seconded Councillor Tozer. Confirmation of minutes. All those in favour? That is carried. I don't have any conflicts of interest that I'm aware of. Has anyone got a conflict of interest? No? No? Okay, fantastic. In which case, we'll go into item 6.1, which is a presentation from Study Gold Coast, their biannual report. Thanks, Nick. And we'll bring Alfred in. I'm not quite sure, is it Alfred and Rob? I didn't see Rob there, I only saw Alfred. It's only Alfred? Yeah. Sorry? Oh, he is there? Yeah, okay. Rob, Alfred?
Chairman.
Nice to see you. Okay, we'll let everyone get comfortable. That's good. All right, always good to see you guys here. So, and no doubt you've got some pretty exciting stuff to tell us. It's all looks pretty good in the report, but looking forward to seeing your presentation. So, are you kicking off, Rob?
Oh, yes, I am.
Opening the batting? Yeah. You've got to push the little, yep.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, councillors and officers. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide this presentation to you today. The Australian government announced a raft of support initiatives, including the rebate of student visa fees for students arriving within an 8-week period. This has been a positive step to getting us back on track, and Study Gold Coast is well positioned to take advantage of every opportunity that comes our way. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the City of Gold Coast for the continued and unwavering support over the past very difficult 2 years. The report is detailed and we'll take the majority as read. However, we did want to point out just a few takeaways. Firstly, in terms of the industry overview, there are currently 19,525 students studying on the Gold Coast, including 6,000 overseas with visas waiting to return. The top enrolments by nationality are Brazil, India, China, Colombia and Japan. In terms of attraction, round 2 of the student accommodation grant resulted in 74 accommodation grants offered, which equates to $3.1 million in total course fees and 3.7 million in terms of economic impact. 17 trade events took place in the 6-month period, including the Global Careers and Education in Sport Summit, the signing of an MOU with the Japanese Society of the Gold Coast, and the Australian International Education Conference. In terms of experience, the Mayor's student ambassadors, 16 ambassadors were chosen to represent the city from 11 different nationalities and 9 institutions. The Student Hub continues to provide vital services to students on the Gold Coast, and from July to December 2021, there were 2,221 visits to the Hub from over 100 institutions and nationalities. 29 events and workshops were held with 631 participants, and 268 student support appointments were made to assist students with a wide range of issues. In regard to employability, Gold Coast Student Jobs provides connection between student and graduate job seekers with employers. There are now some 2,280 registered users with over 1,000 employment opportunities available at any one time. All jobs registered on the site are reviewed and approved by Study Gold Coast. The Kickstart graduation program assists the development of recent graduates. We had 20 participants that have graduated from the program during this period, and Study Gold Coast has received strong support from businesses and are looking to implement a co-payment structure next year. In regard to the Mobile Student Hub, we hosted 32 events with 2,896 student interactions. In regard to retention, World Teachers' Day in October, we celebrated World Teachers' Day by visiting 52 member institutions and delivering 100 gift baskets to teachers and their support staff. The Careers Alliance Network, we believe, is the envy of the nation and gaining substantial momentum, delivering unrivalled PD experiences for teachers, parents and stakeholders citywide. So I guess in conclusion, considering what we've been through, we are repivoting back to what we were supposed to be doing originally, pre-pandemic. We are optimistic. The international students are returning, and we believe that we are extremely well positioned to consolidate the growth of the education sector on the Gold Coast. Thank you again for the opportunity for this presentation, and I'll now hand over to Alfred. Thanks, Alf.
Good afternoon, Chair, councillors. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Can you hear me okay? I would like to apologise. I wasn't just standing here. This remote that clicks through the presentation, there's a do not remove sign and it's connected to the panel. So I didn't want to pull it out and then walk back and sit back down. So just in case you thought something had gone a bit awry, I apologise. Yeah, look, I guess if there's one thing you are going to take from this presentation, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the City of Gold Coast and to you as councillors. I must say we definitely wouldn't be in such a great position if we hadn't have stuck with the investment and with the support that we get from the City of Gold Coast. So thank you very much. From a marketing perspective, we ran 2 major campaigns over that 6-month period. We reached over 600,000 people, and the response is extremely positive. We do know that we do have some challenges, and although it is extremely positive, students are still making the decision to maybe I'll just hang in there and wait till the flights are readily available and till there's more opportunities for me to just jump on a plane and get to the coast. We are working through some of the other issues, like with some of our short stay students in groups that do come to the coast. There are some challenges in terms of if a student does get it, what do they do? How do they isolate from the group? Does the whole group have to isolate? Those types of questions aren't yet answered, but we are working through that process. I did want to share with you a little bit about the road ahead for us as an organisation and how we'll work with the city to get back to 2019 numbers. We do wish to return a strong pipeline of students, and that's that first pillar there for us as part of our 12-month plan over the next year. And I'll I'll articulate a little bit more through the budget presentation, what's in detail in terms of what we're going to deliver. But you can see there that we've already launched one of our marketing campaigns. We did that last week with a great reception globally to say, wow, you're really supporting students by giving a bit of a grant, a travel grant to get students moving again. Because we do know that that travel hesitancy is a bit of an issue we all face in terms of getting back to business as usual. We also have our Visiting Family and Relatives campaign that we're going to be working through with Destination Gold Coast, and that'll be about inviting existing students to invite their friends and relatives to come and visit them to holiday here on the Gold Coast, which is a great initiative. And then trade missions and familiarisation tours, we've already kicked those off. We do have one heading over to India very, very, very shortly in the next 2 weeks, which is great. And a lot of our member institutions are coming along for that journey, which is great to just be back and travelling and moving again, which is great. The next pillar there is about stimulating large-scale student accommodation projects. So as you would all know, affordable accommodation is an issue throughout the city and throughout southeast Queensland, let's be honest. But we feel that there's an opportunity for us to unpack what the opportunity actually is, and then look at how do we get people to invest, whether it's private, whether it's government, whether it's the education sector themselves, investing in large-scale student accommodation, because it's one of our greatest challenges that we face as a sector into the future is that affordable, at-scale accommodation. To give you a comparison, we've already started to crunch the numbers and look at the data. We've appointed Barclays to work through some of that data with us, and so that we can build a bit of a business case so that we can take to providers that operate accommodation and also take to the education sector and also present it here to you as councillors to show you what the opportunity is and looks like. And I guess already we've seen that accommodation here on the coast is $80 more expensive a week than it is in Brisbane CBD for a student, which is a bit of a challenge for us as a sector, right? And we've got to work through that. Now, there is some plans across the sector, including at Bond University, to build 800 units. That hasn't quite gotten across the line yet, but we'll work with them to make sure that those opportunities come to fruition. And then working back to where we were in 2019, which is focusing on the right student for the right reason and the right talent for the right reason. So an industry focus that stimulates growth in particular industries, and also the long stay students that are here for the long haul and are going to return the best economic value for us as a city. So we all know the constraints, public transport constraints or just accommodation constraints. Having a strategy that's wrapped around quality over quantity seems like a good idea to me. So that's what we're working our way back to. And equally, you know, like I say, volume is great, but they've got to be here for the right reason. So we did launch our It's Your Moment campaign, and thank you to the councillors that did come along to that. That campaign is essentially covering off two challenges that we face. The first is the travel hesitancy, so getting students to realise that it's now time for them to engage in travel and come and study and work and live and play here on the Gold Coast. And that is the next challenge there is we've got a whole raft of initiatives by the federal and state government that are coming into play that are getting students on visas that are offshore to come now. So there's a visa rebate program that they're running. And that's great. That'll get, you know, a small cohort here very quickly. But then we're anticipating a bit of a levelling off, both across the education sector, the English language sector, and all the rest of the sort of adjoining sectors that we work within. So this is centred around that mid-year intake, and it gives us about a 3 to 4 month lead time to promote this into markets across the world. So it's a travel grant of $500 for 500 students, and they're on a 500 visa. So it's a bit of play on words. It's really to support agents too. Our agent network has probably been hit the hardest, to be honest, because they haven't necessarily been able to process as many students and to get them here so that they receive their revenue. And this will just give them something to get moving again, which is great. And they have to be studying a minimum of 24 weeks with one of our membership institutions to keep the quality really high. So our marketing calendar, you can see this is just a draft and we're working through what that looks like for us. You can see the top half is offshore marketing campaigns and the bottom half is onshore marketing campaigns, and we feed into a variant of different things across the city and a variant of different activities globally to get our brand and reputation back up there. We do have a bit of a challenge. The Australian brand reputation is a bit challenging for us, and we know for many different reasons, but we've just got to chip away and make sure that the Gold Coast stays top of mind for those individuals offshore. And then looking at our trade calendar, like I said, we've already kicked off a mission to India, and that was very, very positively received. And our offshore activity and our onshore activity need to marry together so that we're taking advantage of some of the work we did with our student accommodation grant onshore as well. So we need to, I guess, foster those relationships that we built through that process in Sydney and Melbourne, and then continue the work that we've been doing offshore in our key markets. Now, this is just a draft, and I'd appreciate any of your feedback with anything that I've presented today, because we are building our business plan, and I look forward to coming and fleshing out in a little bit more detail with you what that looks like. But lastly, like I started, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the council officers and the team, the economic team. They've been great working with us, so thank you.
You look through the report, it's just been such a difficult time for you, and yet look at the KPIs, you've met just about all of those. It's nearly all of those are the ones that really, really matter. I don't know how you've done it, so it's very very nice of you to thank council, but I think you're selling yourself a bit short. We do appreciate that, but you really do perform admirably under incredibly difficult situations time and time again. It's so congratulations for what you've done. But Councillor Tozer, I will open it up for questions. Yeah.
Thanks. Awesome. It's going good. I'm interested in this accommodation shortage thing and the stat that you gave us, which is that the cost of accommodation here is $80 more than it is in Brisbane City. Could you elaborate on that? And when you mentioned that you were kind of working with some entity to try to rectify that, what that means?
Thank you, Councillor. Great question. So when we did some quick research and we started to look at student accommodation across Brisbane CBD, there are 5 entities that operate large-scale student accommodation within the CBD, and they're running specials at the moment for $169 per week to attract international students to come and stay in those facilities.
Is that like a bed and a shared bathroom? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah,
it's just kind of a bed in a room with a shared bathroom option.
Yeah, very, very affordable, low-key, nothing too special. You've got Urban Nest. You've got a whole raft of them that have done it tough over the last 2 years. But equally, it's a great student attraction piece to be able to say we've got that large-scale student affordable accommodation. So what we've done is we've appointed Barclays, which is a consultant company, to look at what is the data and what is the real need in the first instance. Is there a real need for us to pursue building more student accommodation? Because we know that on flatmates.com there is student accommodation, but it's in Nerang and it's a bit piecemeal and it's a bit sporadic. And then there's still a whole host of homestay families that will take international students as well. So what we want to do in the first instance is just articulate what is the level of the issue and what is the problem. And then the second part of that piece is to build a business case to take it to providers like Urban Nest, the ones that do it well, and say, is there an opportunity for them to build and operate something here on the Gold Coast for us? And that's, I guess it's a threefold document. It'll be able to articulate what are the issues, what are the challenges, and then equally, why don't we have that accommodation here? Why hasn't that already occurred? And then between us, I guess, working with Alicia and her team, we can come to council and articulate what we can do to rectify that. And I don't necessarily feel, personally, my gut feel, it isn't just a council issue. I think it's also a state government issue. I think it's an educational sector issue, because we need to support those providers offering that accommodation, or it's not going to be viable. So I think it's a holistic team approach to Team Gold Coast. Let's get something to happen in the space. And there are many projects. There's about 5 or 6 projects that I know that are teetering on actually being developed and getting moving, We just need to pull the trigger and make those happen. I hope that helps.
No, that's good.
Just before I go to Councillor Taylor, I've got Councillor Gates has had a hand up there for a while, and then I'm going to come back with something too. So, Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Chairman. Just through you, there was a lot of information about the student accommodation grant within the presentation we received, but no detail that I could see about the cost of that program. And I noted that the funding ran out, which is why it stopped. I just wondered what the per student cost of that program was.
Good question. Thank you. Through you, Chair. $2,500 per student.
Okay, so that my next question was going to be, was the Kickstart considered more worthwhile? But it's obviously more economical as well.
Yeah, it was fit for purpose at the time to recruit students that are onshore looking for their next study opportunity. So I think it was just a campaign at a point in time that did its job. There was 250 total students that took it up, resulting in, $20+ million to the local economy. So it really did its job. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you for the information.
If I could just add to that too, I think as Alf said, it served its purpose. It attracted students that were in country to the Gold Coast that would not otherwise have come here. And at the end of the day, it had run its race, so we've moved on to other things.
So just before I go to you, Councillor Taylor, I was just out of interest, Alfred, it was just, as far as homestay accommodation goes, what sort of percentage of students are staying in homestay?
Good question. Thank you, Councillor. I do, depending on the part of the sector that you're talking about. So a large portion of English language or new students to the coast would stay in homestay. The students that have been here more than 12 months generally tend to want to stay in their own accommodation or a shared type accommodation. I would say that 20+% is in homestay of the total number of students.
Yeah, Councillor Taylor, thanks for being so patient.
No, thank you. And through the chair, great work to Study Gold Coast and the whole team. Done an amazing job. In relation to job opportunities for students coming here, moving forward, how important, or because we've got a real, we're struggling with obviously employment on the Gold Coast and getting good people for our businesses. How important is that to sell to a student coming here, and how do we compare to other cities in relation to shortages?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. It's extremely important, and we're finding that international education is becoming more and more in demand across the country and globally. We're starting to see Study Southwest Australia open up. Who would have thought that was a thing, And they've realised that, the economics of it makes sense, and also the skill shortage gap filling makes sense, absolutely. So it's a huge issue, finding the right talent to do those part-time, casual and full-time jobs. We have a strong offering. We have 2 years additional post-study work rights at the moment. One thing we are talking to the federal government about is them not increasing the metropolitan cities to match us. Because the metropolitan cities have been arguing that why can you get 4 years of post-study work rights on the Gold Coast, but you can only get 2 in Brisbane? And that's a huge driver for a student to come and work and live and study in a particular destination. So our offering is extremely strong at the moment. And given the campaigns that we're going to be launching, it's front and centre to make sure that, the likes of the tourism and hospitality sector has good pipeline of workforce to be able to offer the experience that they need to offer to their customers. And you'll see there is a page in the report that has a couple of diagrams about job opportunities for students. At any one time, there can be 1,000 to 1,400 jobs on our jobs platform on any one day. And there's huge demand across the coast, and it actually breaks it down into suburb, and Surfers Paradise is the highest. There's 4,250 odd job vacancies for students in your division. So, yeah, it's hugely important. And Southport is second to that, so with just a little over 4,000 job opportunities. So.
Okay, councillors, any other questions for Alfred or Rob? No? Okay, guys, thank you. We've already, slapped you on the back. We'll keep slapping you on the back, but there we go. Done a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Hamill.
Mr. Chair, I actually had a question for Councillor Patterson on this item, if I could. Happy to take it. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Patterson, as Council's board member on Study Gold Coast, I was hoping she might give us all a bit of an update on her thoughts on how the board is performing and a bit of insight of what's happening at board meetings and maybe future discussions happening as well.
You should probably start with thanking the honourable member for the question, the way that was phrased. So there we go, Councillor Patterson. Okay.
Thank you. The simplest way to say it is I have a real experience of a very healthy, robust board. I think to perhaps answer your question in a way that serves you, I think it's only appropriate and fair to the board that we would move into confidential. I don't know what the reason, how I would put that, but I don't know whether it's really, I don't know how to answer that without, positive, I suppose is the clear thing, but I don't know how much to communicate otherwise. Because I'm talking about, you know, there's relationships of individual people and things, so how would I do that?
Director has just said it's very hard really to find a reason as such, so you'd probably need to
do it in public. Okay, sure.
You'd have to do it, but without giving away obviously any confidential information.
The first thing I'd say about our board, the Study Gold Coast board, is I think it's a very healthy makeup. So we've got representations from our 3 universities. We've got Griffith, Bond and SEU. You've got representation from TAFE, from the high school, and also from the vocational and, you know, ESL sector. One thing I do find interesting is that tension on the board, because different members of Study Gold Coast have different interests and sometimes competing interests. And I think that is dealt with very healthily on the board. The other thing I would say, just from a governance perspective, Linda, who's the secretary, dots every I, crosses every T, everything is tickety-boo in terms of compliance. The tickety-boo, my official formal term, that's right. Yeah, my take on it sitting in the board meetings is one of the biggest risks to Study Gold Coast and to that sector is the accommodation matter. And I was at the homelessness symposium this morning as well, and the stats that we've got on accessible accommodation at the moment are pretty frightening. 0.6% vacancy rate across the board in our city at the moment. That's 5 times tighter than what's considered a healthy market, 2.6 to 3.5. But the really scary numbers are 0.1% of that available rental market is available for people on low incomes, very low incomes. So that really starts making things really tight, particularly with students. The other interesting thing about students, which the board has had to consider, is what people want in accommodation has changed. So they're noticing since COVID, there is a much greater demand for single spaces where people would before be more comfortable in a shared accommodation, the shared bathroom circumstance. That's not as wanted. So I think that just impacts on so many areas that we're going to have to consider, like what does the city do in terms of that space as well. So, but from our board meetings, I think we have 6 a year. There are a very fresh 7:30 a.m. start down in Southport. Very passionate people on that board, healthy tension, excellent CEO, and so fortunate to have Rob Albridge there, who's just got a very kind of key, kind of strategic, overarching perspective of the interests. So, yeah, pretty happy. If that helps.
Mr. Chair, so I did tell Councillor Patterson beforehand I was going to throw a question at her on it, but for me that's actually important because I don't see the point of having board members or observers on boards if as a council we're not going to ask the question when these reports come up, and would encourage her that any time that if she ever felt there was something that was of importance for councillors to know, that maybe in confidence that it should be raised with the director and then a confidential memo could come out through the organisation. But thank you for her commentary and look forward to her first report back on the Holder Board in the future too.
Thanks, Councillor Hamill, and thanks, Councillor Patterson. Okay. Okay, it probably would be fitting for Councillor Patterson if you'd like to move it, but given that yes, I don't think anyone will complain too much about that. And second to Councillor Tozer. Any other discussion, councillors? No? Okay, so the resolution there on the screen. You're okay there, Councillor Gates?
I am, Chairman, but I'm going to have to declare a late conflict on an item coming up that I didn't receive, so I just want to alert you to that.
Okay, okay, all right. All right, so Council notes the Study Gold Coast biannual report as at 31 December 2021 as a requirement of funding agreement with Council. So that's moved Councillor Patterson, it's seconded Councillor Tozer, and we're ready to take the vote. We will do so. All those in favour? That is carried. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Got Nick sitting in the chair. I think Nick's probably been. Oh, sorry, sorry. I didn't see you there behind the lectern. There, my apologies. Please. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, look, I think you've probably met with most councillors, if not all, but I still think it'd be nice to have a presentation, given that you're here and you've prepared it all. You don't want to, yeah.
Sure, I can do that.
It'd be nice. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and councillors. Thank you for your time. So, Smart City update, quite aware that we haven't been to council for a little while. So what I thought I would do is just to give you an update on what we've been doing over the last kind of 12 months to 2 years. And just letting you know that the roadmap is predominantly an internal document. It's not a strategy. It's more to, I guess, focus it's like an internal business plan, basically looking at some focal areas of where the Smart City team and what direction we're taking over the next 2 years from a Smart City perspective. So just to provide you with some context about Smart City, so we were established as Digital City in 2016 and we were based in the CEO's office. In 2018, we combined with Economic Development as the Office of Innovation and Economy, and we were transitioned into the Economy, Planning and Environment Directorate. And then in July last year, there was a bit of a shift. So Digital City, which is what it was known as, were separated. So there was some services that were transitioned over to the IT department, so BITS, and then a few of the services remained within EP&E under the City Economy branch, and we rebranded from Digital City to Smart City. And then from that, in November, we presented a report to ELT, the roadmap, and that was as a result of that transition and kind of helped us redefine our purpose as Smart City and our role within the organisation. So to give you some context around what a smart city is, I just thought it might be useful to kind of set the scene a little bit. So when you kind of, do a Google search on smart cities or look at strategies across the globe or even nationally, there are three key ingredients that really compose of what a smart city is, and that's the use of technology, data, and its people. That's usually to improve the livability, workability and sustainability. So they're really consistent themes across a lot of strategies that you'll see across many cities. So I think the people aspect is the most important. So while it's kind of great to focus on tech and data and get excited about new and emerging technologies, it's also important to consider that tech and data doesn't necessarily solve problems or challenges on their own. Tech and data supports and enhances other key enablers such as people and process, stakeholder and community engagement as well. So I've got up there an international standard. So this is one of the latest standards that was published on smart cities. So there's been many other Australian standards as well. So in 2019 and 2020, a range of different smart city standards were published around sustainability indicators for measuring smart city goals, smart city operational models, and even one around smart city vocabulary. And all of those, what they all have in common is a link to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So a lot of, there's consistency in the standards as well around them going beyond tech and data, really strong emphasis on focusing on challenges or solving challenges holistically through leadership and governance and culture and changing those business models. And the second point is evolutionary process. So, a city doesn't transform, become smarter or become more data-driven overnight. It's evolutionary. It takes time and requires, an uplift in skills, both, internal to an organisation, but also within the community as well. Some trial and error and some flexibility and agility in terms of keeping up with what's happening across industry standards and across the globe as well. So having said that, we're doing lots of great stuff internally, and this is not an exhaustive list by all means. So what this really represents is there's a lot of great stuff happening across the city, across the organisation, and I believe that our role as a smart city is to really consolidate the great things that are happening across the organisation and presenting a consistent message around what we're doing as a city. So I won't go into too much detail on this slide because it's in the report as well, but these are the three kind of strategic areas that Smart City focuses on. So Internet of Things, insights and partnerships. So the next few slides are just some examples of what we've been doing under each of those streams. And feel free to jump in with any questions as we go as well. So in terms of the Internet of Things, we have a very extensive city-owned network. It's Australia's largest city-owned network. There's 94 gateways, which are basically little kind of Wi-Fi looking things that actually capture the data that from the devices that we've got out in the field. As I mentioned, extensive coverage, even out into the sea. We've got about 5,500 devices on the network, which has been deployed over the last 12 months. We have a commercial strategy in development with our third-party network provider, and that commercial strategy is due for completion around the end of April, and that's basically opening it up to our local businesses and our local community, so students, universities as well, and then planning on launching that in about mid-22. This is a little bit small to see, but I can send this around afterwards. Yeah, so this is basically a list of our Internet of Things projects. Some are current, some are expanding, some are pending, and some are on in a trial phase. So as I mentioned, 5,500 devices on our network. About 4,500 of those are from our smart water meter project. We've got the flashing school speed signs on there. We've got some smart barbecues. We're trialling some bins. And, the benefits for all of these projects range as well. But I think one of the major success factors or major successes is the project being led by Water and Waste around the smart water meter project. So since its inception in October 2020, there's been an approximation of 37 million litres of water loss prevention on a daily basis, which is a huge saving to council, not just monetary, but also environmentally as well. And then for some of, so the school speed signs, you know, we're kind of a cost saving of around $7,000 to $10,000, not being on a cellular network like a 3G or a 4G. And I'm happy to go through any of these projects in more detail, like on a one-on-one or a... Absolutely.
No, it's okay.
Yes, absolutely. So from an insights perspective, that stream, so I don't know if you are aware, we've got some contracts with a company called DSpark and a company called Visa. So we get mobility and expenditure data. Basically all the data is anonymised and aggregated, so we're not getting any individual, you know, movement or expenditure. So this is just an example of the Hodder precinct on Friday the 25th of June last year. So Friday the 25th of June was when Amy Shark performed. So it's a full day analysis, not specifically the Amy Shark period or the event. And this is taking into account people that don't live or work in that particular precinct. So the data is down to a statistical area 1, which is that Hodder precinct. And you can just see from that, and this is in comparison to the previous week, so there was a 55% increase in visitors to that precinct on that day compared to the Friday before. And the top people that came from, were from Surfers Paradise in terms of them visiting that particular precinct. And once again, I won't go into too much of an analysis, and happy to set up any kind of a workshop or a one-on-one meeting with anyone. So this one here is using the Visa expenditure data. So this one's really interesting. So this is from a period of, it should be 2020, my apologies. So from February 2020 to Feb 2021. So looking at that COVID period. So you can see the blue shaded area is the level of restrictions and border closures. So the darker the blue, the tighter the restrictions, and then it eases up in terms of when it goes to the light blue. So you can see as the restrictions are tighter, there's a drop in money or expenditure on the Gold Coast. I don't know if I did anything then. And then the peaks are the Christmas period. So that's a typical pattern that we've seen. It always peaks in December and then drops off quite substantially in January. The orange section was the 8-day lockdown last year. And I've got another slide after this, which kind of reflects the panic buying situation. But you can see that as the beginning of that lockdown period, the expenditure drops quite considerably, but then starts to pick up as we come out of lockdown. Yes. So this is Visa transaction. Oh, effectively. Yes. So Visa provides the data about, and is it money? Is it Visa cards that are linked to the Gold Coast, or is it spending on the Gold Coast? It's spending on the Gold Coast. So if someone from the Gold Coast takes their Visa card and spends in New South Wales, that doesn't come. No, correct. Yep. And this is residential spend. So let me just reiterate again, this is not individual spend. We can't get that information. It's all aggregated and anonymised. What does that mean? What is residential? So we can determine if it's residential or a visitor to the Gold Coast. So Visa provides information about people who are either living on the Gold Coast. On the Gold Coast and what they're spending. Yes. But they won't provide information about people who are living elsewhere staying on the Gold Coast. Yes, so we do. Sorry, yes, they do get that. We do get that as well. Yes, sorry, yes. That's not this. That's not this. This is just residential. But we can get to visitor expenditure on the Gold Coast. Yeah.
Okay, we've already got Councillor Owen Jones there as well.
So, Chair, I was going to ask not a dissimilar question to that, because this type of graph to me is really powerful if we're going to overlay it with what we're after MEGC to do. So, for example, I was going to ask whether or not that's visitor spend at December, because if you then overlay it with something, for example, like the GC 600, which is moved into the December period, it kind of, we need to program stuff outside of areas which are already busy in order to get the best bang for our buck.
Absolutely. So we can overlay visitor numbers on this data as well. So just moving on from that, this is the day of the announcement of the lockdowns on the 31st of July last year. So we did a bit of an analysis kind of the 2 months leading up to this lockdown. So in general, there was a general trend upwards in terms of entertainment and restaurants, in terms of expenditure.
So Aqua is Dan Murphy's, is it?
Yeah, yes. And then as soon as the lockdown was announced at 9 a.m, that blue line is actually food and groceries. So when you're comparing that to 2 months worth of Saturdays between 12 and 3 p.m, which is where you see that real high peak, it was 130%, 36% increase from previous Saturdays at the 12 to 3 p.m. mark. So you can see that's just a bit of a reflection on panic buying, basically. On the baseline of the, yeah. Again, I can sit with anyone and we can go through a lot more detail and a lot more analysis on certain precincts. So happy to do that for your precincts as well. So, because you can really get into like really heavily involved in this. It's quite exciting stuff. So moving on to the, yeah, I know, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just on that too, Tanya, I think it's important to note that you and your team have been doing a great job of working with Catherine Rollo and Richard Clark's team as well, with Nick, on productive Gold Coast and those type of projects we're doing from a city plan perspective as well. So we're getting that data that we've never had to be able to see how are people moving, how's that changing. I think that's a really positive out of that too.
Thank you. And our third stream is around partnerships. So this is, I just guess, a bit of an overview. So we're working with the Australian Computer Society and Hillcrest Christian College. Hillcrest and the Australian Computer Society won a grant from the state government. They won some money, and it's specifically around technology, but specifically Internet of Things. So we've been working with Hillcrest and the ACS. So we're going to give them access to our Internet of Things network. They've decided they want to do an environmental sensor project. So they're putting a buoy in their lake that they've got at the school. And we're just waiting on the sensors to come, but it's a really good collaborative project with industry, with government, and then internally with our environmental, like our catchment management team as well. Correct. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, the next one is, so we are working with the CSIRO. So this is all in, we're still in discussions. We've got a draft agreement. So we're just working on scope and deliverables at the moment. And this is around deploying some environmental sensors so we get localised weather patterns, so some microclimate weather pattern data. And the intention there is to link that to open data. So we want that data to be open to the public, to researchers, to universities, to industry. So that one's, a watch and see scenario. So I'm happy to come back and present in a bit more detail once that's finalised. And then the third one is around, which is in the report as well, Bond University. So we're in we're in year 2 of a 3-year research project with Bond. We have a PhD student that sits with us one day a week, and heavily involved in using our mobility and expenditure data to look at forecasting models around tourism demand on a very granular basis, on a daily basis. So using a lot of predictive modelling and artificial intelligence for that too. And again, we've got a presentation which we're happy to provide in session or out of session, one-on-one for that as well. That was it. Thanks.
Councillor Hamill has a question, and then Councillor Tozer.
Mr. Chair, I'm interested. So we've been presented the roadmap, why it's not considered to be endorsed into a strategy, or is it ELT's intent that it would form into a strategy in the future?
Through me, Mr. Chair, I tend to step in here too if you want to, but I think at the moment, as we know, all strategies are on hold and there's a big review. I think for me it had been some time since we had come in front of council and let you know what Tanya and her team, and obviously presenting the great work that they've been doing as well. So I think that's important. At a point in time, obviously some of the work that Tanya's doing is absolutely included in the draft economic growth strategy that we have and other strategies as we go through those reviews. So I think at this stage it's kind of like an internal implementation plan of what Tanya and her team are doing. But over time, I absolutely think that there is absolutely need for a bigger strategy, and it would be how it would fit into that economic growth strategy as well.
Yep.
Councillor Tozer.
So I'm interested in that graph, the visa, the spending thing, and I think, everyone, I think every councillor would probably be interested in how the investment, particularly the investment that we make in events, is reflected in spending trends.
Mm-hmm.
To what extent can we bombard you with requests for that for information? I don't want to.
We've already
there needs to be a system for us to be able to do that properly.
Through the chair, we have done one for Broadbeach already on a request for a councillor. You can bombard us, that's fine. A lot of the querying, once we've done it for one precinct, it's relatively easy to do it for any other precinct. The most time-consuming thing is to put it into a nice visual PowerPoint presentation. But we can give you raw data. We can provide the data in any way you like. But more than happy to do one for lots of different precincts. So as I mentioned, it goes down to an SA1 level, so we can get data at an SA2, 3, and then obviously SA4 is the whole Gold Coast.
So the graph you showed us, you said was residential spend, so people who live here.
Yep.
Is there a regular reporting mechanism where we could see? I mean, I would be interested in this committee or some formal quarterly report on that graph, residential and visitor expenditure, with in the context of events that have been held in that 90-day period. Mm-hmm. To me, that allows us as councillors to justify, strongly justify to our constituents that the reason we support events in this way is because it results in consumer expenditure that is reflected in this graph. So I don't know if that's something I can request, or if a CR is required, or if there's a resolution. But if we could get a quarterly report, or a report that just kind of said, here's the events for the last 90 days, and here's how
Through the chair, absolutely. So our intention was to start doing some quarterly reporting, and part of our roadmap is actually opening this data up to the community as well. In terms of what format and how that looks, we're still determining the best way for that. But yeah, more than happy to come back to council and do a quarterly report on everything that we've actually provided internally and externally to the community too. So I think that's quite important too. So we do work with MEGC. We're looking at doing some work with HOTA. We've got meetings with Destination Gold Coast, because this information for Destination Gold Coast is really powerful as well. So we're just in, I guess, the throes of kind of developing scope and what that looks like for them too. So I think a combined, maybe quarterly, this is what we've done over the last 3 months, but also that analysis on what's actually happened from an expenditure and visitation perspective is really important too.
Yeah, is that...
Through you, Mr Chair, Councillor Tozer, if you're happy, we can just take that on notice. It was our plan anyway, so a bit of trust there in us, but we're happy to report that. And I think the more work that Tanya and her team do with our entities as well, there's some good information there too. So we might get a bit of a template and even just email it around to councillors to make sure what is in that is what you need.
The other question I had is that obviously it's very relevant to our city events calendar, but there must also be other inputs that change spending habits, and I'd be interested to know what they might be. It occurs to me that in Mudgeeraba, when Aldi has a special on, lots of people go to Aldi, and I'm using that as a silly example, but the point I'm trying to get at is there must be non-event based spikes, or even non-event based valleys that occur in the graph, and I'd be interested to know kind of what are maybe the top 5 things over a 12-month period that stimulate spending that are non-event based
Through the chair, we can certainly do that analysis, and seasonality obviously plays quite an effect on that as well. But through our monthly reporting, we'll look at determining what are the major things that have happened throughout that particular month that have affected the spend and visitation patterns. So,
is there a way to separate it from online spending versus retail spending in fixed premises?
No, so it's just general spend. So we can't determine if, X amount of people did online shopping versus going into a shop.
Yeah, so if Amazon had a big campaign where everyone was expected to do something on Amazon, I think that's the kind of thing I'm thinking of, that our spending habits are quite unique to every single person, but there's certain things that kind of rally us around certain spending activities. So
yes, probably not so much online spending for individuals.
But it can be separated by residential and visitor.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
And then Councillor Hamill.
Thank you very much, and through the chair. Just probably to allude back to part of what Councillor Tozer just raised there was whether it's something that could be used with. We've got the next construction of the light rail, the next stage 3, as to how businesses, because they're right along the highway, right down into Burleigh, how businesses are actually affected, and in that, if it affects that period of spending in that time, how we can potentially mitigate it for the next stage. So is that something that can come out of this sort of thing, that if the spending, if we have a baseline now before any work started or very little work started, and we're not holding our breath, but with all the little work that started, is that having a baseline to say, well, people are still going to these areas, they're still spending, and yes, they did have a period of time, but it might have only been 3 to 6 months that they were impacted over a project of 3 years. So we don't get thrown back at us saying, well, it affected our business for 3.5 years and that's why we went broke. Actually, it didn't affect the spending in your area for 3.5 years. It may have affected it for 3 to 6 months, and that could have been affected by weather, by COVID, by tourism, all that sort of stuff. So some sort of baseline there that potentially we could mitigate risk going forward. I don't know if that's because I'm really poor with technology, but I don't know whether that sort of can help.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, we're actually already doing that. So
I could have saved all that.
So thank you for your question. So our team is working with Transport and Infrastructure, specifically for the Gold Coast, the light rail stage 3. We're doing some work specifically around the Nobbies area, around what it looks like now. And obviously this is a long-term project because construction hasn't started yet, but yes, absolutely getting that baseline data. So it's not just our data. We have mounds of data in Transport and Infrastructure too that we're starting to supplement with this data too. So in a couple of months we may be ready to come and present that too, but at the moment it's very much collecting a lot of data and trying to ask what are the right questions to be able to get the answers to for that specific construction area. So not just necessarily the light rail, but we can kind of copy and paste that model to other infrastructure projects potentially as well.
Yeah, which would have been quite interesting, pardon me, through the chair, like for the Isla Capri Bridge and things like that, if we'd had it in hindsight, to see the changes where it may go from 15,000 vehicles a day to 24,000 vehicles a day and all that sort of stuff, and where people are spending and diverting it to. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Hamill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question through you to the Nick or to the Director. I can't find in the report or in the actual roadmap section of it, some kind of specific KPIs that we're looking to hit with this. So I note on page 25, it's got, we want to see a percentage increase in devices in the network, but there's no numbers set to that. Is that something that's coming up in the future where there would actually be some KPIs that you would be reporting back on each 6 or 12 months?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I know in the draft version of the economic strategy for the sorts of actions that are linked to the roadmap that would potentially be part of the draft strategy, that we've got some more specific KPIs in there that start to measure the percentage increase in the number of devices and things like that. So we could definitely build that sort of stuff into this roadmap so that when we come back on a quarterly basis, we can be reporting against those sorts of KPIs. We just hadn't built them into the initial roadmap at this stage, but we're looking to build them into the draft economic strategy, but can absolutely put some more rigour around that so that when we come back on a quarterly basis, we have that sort of data.
Mr. Chair, if the director's happy to take that on notice too, that I think that'd be an important step in that so that we can see progress in certain areas of it. My second question, I guess to Nick as well, would be on page 25 as well, that mentions develop a return on investment methodology on the value of our data. I remember when I first came into council and this particular area was being handled differently, there was a focus on trying to generate an income from it, or was seen as a possible revenue stream. So could I get some more detail from Nick on what's meant by that line and what we're looking to do in that space now?
I'll let Tanya.
No worries.
Through the chair. Yes, historically there was a very strong focus on the commercialisation of basically everything we did in Digital City. Since the restructure, we've changed that focus a little bit. In terms of that particular kind of objective, the data that we're procuring is high value, so we need to show to council and the community that we are getting a return on investment in that data. So it was more around that. So we need to show the value. So yes, it's great having a really cool graph about the expenditure, but we also need to make sure that we're kind of validating that in some way. And that's what we plan to do over the next kind of 12 months in terms of developing that
cool
ROI methodology.
Chair, that's good to hear, because I think from the information we were given previously on Digital City that while that was a great aspiration, it wasn't actually practical and shouldn't have been the main focus of it, in my opinion. Mr. Chair, on page 27, it talks about partnerships and advocacy, and there's a list of bullet points for what the Smart City team does. There's a list of great points on there, and I was hoping that maybe Tanya could give a couple actual examples on them. So maybe on point one, that work with internal business units to imagine and develop efficient and effective smart solutions of what that actually looks like in great words, but what does it actually look like in real life?
Through the chair. So we do actually get a number of business units come to us going, well, this is the issue that we have. And because we have a relatively kind of good insight in terms of what devices are available, what technologies are available, we can help them to determine the best possible solution for some of the challenges that they're facing. So it was more around that ideation around this is their problem, how can we help them solve it? And then that links into developing some of their requirements. So if they're going out to market, being really specific and clear around what they need from the market and from a supplier.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Hamill, just another one on that too. An example is at the moment we're working with Alison and her team on parks usage data, which will obviously help feed into the LGIP, so that when we do further amendments in the LGIP in the future, we're going to have a lot more data to be able to put our hands on our hearts and say this is why that's being done and this was their usage.
I can give you an example. So we're project managing the Smart Barbecue project. So working really closely with Alison's team. So it's about how are they, so they want smart barbecues, but in terms of how to determine the best possible way to use that data as well. So really helping them determine the value from investing in smart barbecues, for example.
Yeah. So I think, Mr. Chair, I was aware of that particular project, and that those case examples of where that actually applies to in the real world help stack that up, and then we'll see reports in the future come back on that. Mr. Chair, final question is on page 45, and possibly this particular paragraph has been in somewhere else, but I've picked up on 45. But I'm just interested in that for the Gold Coast, the Smart City remit is not only about driving operational efficiency, developing knowledge and infrastructure there. So just to be clear on that, I guess what's seen as the number one remit, is it about the internal focus or is it the external focus?
Through the chair. It has typically been a very strong internal focus, which is why a lot of the projects that we're doing, especially around the Internet of Things, is internally focused. However, I feel as though part of our remit is actually to work with local businesses in terms of enhancing their capability, but also being able for them to provide solutions to council as well. So it's over the next 2 years, my view is that we should be having a bit more of an external focus.
Yeah. And Nick or the director, would I be right in that that's probably a change from where we were 18 months ago as well, that really wasn't considered to be part of the remit of what we were looking to achieve from this?
Sorry, after you, Alicia.
Go, Nick.
All right, I think I think from my perspective, it's part of the, or through you, Mr. Chair, sorry, I think it's part of the evolution of this program. So I think it's become quite embedded internally through those sorts of internal initiatives, which has been, great success stories about how we can work in partnership with Alison's directorate and other parts of the organisation. But it's almost like that's the next stage for us to look at how we can apply this externally with local businesses and how they can benefit from access to that sort of technology, but also access to the amazing data that Tanya's team have and how we analyse that and, use that to support the local business community. So it's essentially, I think, part of the evolution of the program and where it needs to go to next.
Yep, well answered. I thought of this before, but I use MasterCard. So is it only Visa, or is there some Visa MasterCard?
No, through the chair,
how does that work?
we don't have a Visa MasterCard relationship, but it's just Visa. But however, the data is extrapolated to meet the rest of the population, so it's not just specifically Visa. It is extrapolated.
Proportionate from market share for Visa, and then
Correct.
Okay, cool. So it's not.
Yeah.
I just realised I'd changed all my cards a couple of weeks back, and I was like, oh no, that's awesome. What's that?
That'll affect the figures, won't it? You changing?
No, I mean it's all proportion, so it's all good. Part two is how far away is it? The bin sensor program is something that I've kind of talked to the guys about for some time. This idea that at the moment we have this fixed schedule of emptying bins, it's on a rotation, and we just empty them whether they're empty or not. Whereas the bin sensor program effectively enables us to adjust our collection schedule for bins based on how full the bin is. To me, that sounds like a really low-hanging fruit of how we can use Internet of Things to save ratepayers money. How far away are programs like that for us to be able to actually use them to effect? So bins being one example. The other example that I've come across with some of the team and other people who have previously chatted to council about it is things like swing sensors, where I've got 9 primary schools in my area and 313 kind of parks and lots of playgrounds, getting an understanding of how many swings before life. And I appreciate that life of a swing might be 10 years. So what I'm trying to work out is how long will it be before the data that we're collecting is actually useful for us to be able to work out things like wear and tear or adjusting bin schedules for collection so we actually save money.
Through the chair, if you take some of the water-related projects, so the pressure reducing valve monitoring, within the first week they were able to get a benefit from that and an efficiency. So they were able to determine, so an alert was sent to them around high pressure. They went out there and fixed it within, the 24 hours that they got the alert. From the bins perspective, I understand that there is a budget request for this coming next financial year for a pilot. And I believe it's a small amount, so there might be up to about 50 sensors. But then in terms of seeing an actual benefit from that project, it's not really until you scale. So my understanding is that they want to do the western parts of the region. So in terms of trying to create some efficiencies there. So when you look at that, I think there's around about 1,200 bins in that western region right across the coast. You're probably not looking, after a pilot, then looking at year 2, 3 and 4 from an actual return on investment and a benefit.
Yep.
So it's all about scale.
Yep. Thank you. That's all I got. I'm super excited about it though. I'd love to move the item if it's okay.
Okay. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Nick, as well. And I think Councillor Tozer said he'd like to move the item.
Whatever you say, Chair.
Well, you just said you'd like to move the item, so you can move it. We have a second to Councillor Young. Okay. Councillor Tozer, did you need to speak to it at all?
No, I think increasingly we need to invest in this part of our operations in order to save ratepayers money. At the moment, we're just mostly guessing or doing it because it's the way we've always done it. But this data that we're collecting is actually going to help us to be more efficient as an organisation. It's going to be good.
Carried. All right. We're actually going to deal with a supplementary item now, and I'm gathering this is one that Councillor Gates has got a conflict of interest. I got an idea what it might be.
Correct, Councillor. If I could just make a declaration. I understand that the Minute Secretary may have the details, but I accepted a donation from Cross Promotions on the 30th of the 9th 14 for $2,500 and another on the 3rd of the 9th 15 for $2,500. So those amounts represent a declarable conflict of interest. I would like to participate in discussing and making a decision on the item, but obviously that's up to my colleagues to decide.
Okay, Councillor Tozer, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy to move that Councillor Gates, given the nature of the disclosure, that Councillor Gates should participate in the meeting because the donations are of a minor nature.
And the time frame
and from, yeah, there's a standard wording that we use, but I'll say of a remote and minor nature.
You didn't want to add something about the amount of time that's lapsed, or no?
And the time that's lapsed. Yeah, so minor and remote, and the time that's lapsed since the most recent donation.
Sorry, that is a prescribed interest sheet that is on the screen rather than a declarable conflict of interest. Thank you. So if I can help here, Cross Promotions is the name of the related party. The nature of the relationship to the councillor is donor. And the nature of the related party's interests is applicant. Thank you. I think you have the dates. Do you not? And I'm seeking, so the nature of the other person's interest is applicant. Sorry, what's the heading above that one where it says the name of the other person? You said right because it's okay. Thought we already did that bit. Sorry, it's really hard where I am to see what's on the screen. That's correct. And I'm seeking to remain in the room. Can you still hear me? I can't hear anything, Bob. I don't know if anything.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So in that section where it says the reasons why my participation will improve decision making in the public interest, not that. That'll be something else. It'll be I can't remember what we normally write. Does anyone remember what we normally write in that why someone should participate in it? Because I can't remember the reason. There's like a standard.
I think because of the time frame that's passed is relevant.
Because it's prior to the
of the time, yeah.
I think. Sorry to interrupt, but I think it's what I think about why I should stay in the room goes into that, and
yes,
I would
certainly
suggest that I would like to remain in the room and participate in the decision because of the importance of events to our city and my desire to form part of the considerations about the proposed event. Should do it, I think.
That's it. That's Councillor Gates. I shouldn't have interrupted. It should be Councillor Gates saying that one.
Thank you.
So my motion is then that Councillor Gates may participate in the decision because the interest disclosed is remote, and because of the time elapsed since the donations.
That sounds good.
But we're talking 7 years ago. It's just silly.
Sorry, you're moving that, Councillor Tozer?
Yes, please.
Okay, seconded, Councillor Taylor. All right, we've got the procedural motion on the screen. I'll ask councillors to give their indication as to whether they support that. All those in favour? Do we need to actually name everyone, or I suppose we do? Yes. So, so Councillor Patterson, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Young, Councillor McDonald. Are you? You're happy? Sorry, yeah, with that, and myself, and against. No one against, and please note that Councillor Gates did not vote. Okay, you're allowed to stay.
Thank you, Councillor.
Stay in Melbourne or wherever you are. Yeah.
Don't be rude.
All right, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to Steve, to explain what this is all about. So for those of you, have you all seen the supplementary item? Have you? But I still think we need a bit of an overview from Steve.
Councillor Catcher, before you start, just to thank you for letting us bring it up as a late item. It's obviously a significant event.
Yes.
That Steve will give you the overview of, but it also has a significant impact. So a great event, but also with a significant impact to the city. So Steve will give you that overview. We wanted to bring it to council because it's such a big event, really. So I'll let Steve do the overview.
Unit, we've received an application for a 3-day music festival on Surfers Paradise Beach. The event is proposed to be held at the end of April into early May across a long weekend, across a Friday, Saturday and Sunday evening. The applicant has indicated to us that they are projecting up to 5,000 persons to attend each day of the event, and they'll have a site that will accommodate that size audience. The applicant has indicated to us that from an economic point of view, at this stage, 65% of ticket purchases have been made from outer region. So in the information that we've put into an economic impact calculator, the impact to the Gold Coast is quite positive, in particular for the Surfers Paradise precinct. The event itself is targeted towards the younger demographic, 18 to 30, with 3 different music genres across each night to attract a different audience. Under normal circumstances, we would deal with something like this under delegation, but as a result of it being a new large event across 3 days on a long weekend, and it may have some impacts on the precinct it is being held, we felt it was appropriate to come and seek a council decision on the matter. The impacts that may be evident in the precinct could be across general beach amenity, in that it is a ticketed event. There are management plans in place to ensure that that amenity continues to exist by way of fence lines, by way of thoroughfares around those fence lines. The applicant is working with various internal and external stakeholders on things like their road closure permit, which is attempting to provide a safe environment for both event attendees and members of the public. The applicant's also working very closely with their health and regulatory services area in relation to noise from the event to ensure that it complies with the necessary standards. A stakeholders meeting is being held, and the top line discussion points are listed in the report. And the general consensus at that stakeholders meeting was that the strategies that have been put in place through those management plans are looking on track to a positive and safe event being delivered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The area councillor first, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, just Steve, I just want to get a clarification on the map on the page 12. Is there access along the actual beachfront for the general public to walk past or is it how far down with it is that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So at all times, there will be public access along the water's edge. So if I'm a family walking north to south on the beach, at no point in time am I going to be asked to leave the beach. I'll be able to walk around the fence line. I think we're talking about a 5 metre wide path that will be maintained during the event, during bump in and out at all times.
Thank you.
Councillor Tozer.
Thank you. The Gold Coast Film Festival is being held from the 20th of April to the 1st of May. Normally there's an event called SIPFest, which is a short film festival. I think it's been held on the beach a few times. Do you know what day that's been? It's not been released yet, but is there any conflict between this event and that event?
Councillor,
down south?
it will be, yes.
Sweet. It's awesome. It's great. That's all I had.
There are a number of events on over that weekend, and I think generally it doesn't sort of impact on others, but that one you're saying will.
Well,
so,
South's far enough away, but the South's far enough away. I'm just conscious that there will actually be a noise amenity on Surfers Paradise Beach. So if the beach is being used for any other purpose, it's going to be.
Yeah. I think it's.
Yeah. Sure.
Through you,
yes, Steve, please. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of the affected stakeholders, the impacted stakeholders, the Gold Coast Film Festival would not be regarded as an impacted stakeholder at this stage. It's at a different end of the beach.
Yeah, I was pretty comfortable with it when I looked at the report. I might just go to Councillor Gates.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Through you to Steve, did I understand correctly that this has already been marketed and that sales have been achieved for the event?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, Deputy Mayor, we were made aware of the event being marketed in mid-January. As a result of that, we reached out to the applicant in order to expedite the assessment of their plans.
Right, okay. And am I correct that it would finish by 9:30 in the evening? Any noise?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, at this stage, at 9:30 in the current plans would be the end of bar service, with the completion of noise and any activity on that site as at 10 o'clock, with an exiting of the site thereafter.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Tozer, you got your light on there, or is it? No? Okay.
Oh no, no. I'm happy to move the item if there's nothing else. But but you're the divisional councillor, so.
Councillor Taylor, did you want to move the item?
I'm happy to move it.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay. And Councillor Tozer, happy to second. Yeah. You know, it's a big event. It's good. We've got to support events. It's you know, there are a few little issues that's still got to be sorted out with it, but overall it looks pretty good.
Swimmers, mate, swimmers. It's actually, honestly, it's actually a really good pickup from the city events team to initiate contact. That's good work.
Steve always does good work. Yeah, there we go. All right, so it's moved, it's seconded. Did you want to speak to it at all, Darren? Or?
Thank you. Look, I think it's really important that with the city opening back up to interstate and international visitors, that we have events ready to go, and the opportunity of working with external partners to activate particularly Surfers Paradise that has gone through tough times in the last 2 years of COVID. It's really important. Got full confidence in the office to ensure that all the concerns are met, and I just think it would be a real positive for Surfers Paradise as general, but Gold Coast as overall, to welcome everyone to our city. Thank you.
Terrific. Okay. Anyone else want to add anything? Councillor Gates.
Thanks, Chairman. I would just like to say that it's refreshingly positive to hear all councillors in support of an event like this. that is on the beach, because look at our magnificent beaches. There's nothing like it anywhere in the world, and to take advantage of the beautiful beach and to present a music festival for youngish people, it's a wonderful opportunity, and I think it takes into account the amenity of the people who live nearby the beach as well by ensuring the early closure. 10 o'clock is not late by anyone's standards, and so all in all, looks like a great proposal.
Yeah, I agree, and certainly it's not late in Surfers Paradise. 10 o'clock, that's for sure. So yeah, might be in some of the sleepy suburbs, but not in Surfers. So, just absolutely, yeah. All righty, Will. All right, happy to take the vote. We'll put the vote. All those in favour? That is carried. That is fantastic.
Chairman, I think you need to note how I voted.
Yes, of course, yes. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Gates voted in the positive. Thank you. Before we go into closed for the last item, is there any general business? I haven't been alerted to any. No? Okay, that's good. All right, in which case, if we can have a mover into close, the reason is that we are actually considering, where are we? Sorry? Yes, exactly. So something that actually affects the local government budget. So that is why we need to go into close. So moved Councillor Tozer, seconded Councillor Young. Put the vote. All those in favour? Okay, thank you. We are now in close. in open and the streaming is back on. And to you, Councillor Tozer.
Thank you, Councillor Castro. So we've moved the officer's recommendation with a couple of amendments, and the amendment that the amended motion that I've put includes a sixth that a report be brought to a future Economy, Tourism and Events Committee regarding use of the city's smart city data reconciled with both divisional differential generate contributions for tourism and also individual event dates to create some standardised report that it's intended that will help inform our decision making about whether to support a particular event and the economic impact of given events based on the consumer spending data that was part of the earlier item. Maybe I don't actually understand 5 that much, but maybe if Councillor Taylor could follow up.
Thank you, and through the chair. Look, this is an important document and a report for us to understand where the money that is being provided by ratepayers and where in the city events are being held and who's managing it. I think from the discussions we've had today, we've got a massive opportunity as a city to be a city that invites people to attractions, whether it's events, whether it's artists, and it's really important we get this right. And from this particular report, I think we're going to see hopefully more targeted reporting on events to ensure we get that right. It's also great for, and I thank the councillors supporting the ability of having the Surfers Paradise beachfront markets, any profits to that contribute to any local activations that have been lost to the local area in that particular area. So I'm hoping that I'll get full support on that side as well. Thank you.
Back to you, Councillor Tozer, to close.
The report we spoke to enclosed, and it was elements of it were confidential in relation to budget matters, and we can't go into those specifics, but it effectively showed councillors the proportion of contribution to the tourism elements of the differential general rate, and reconciled that against the contribution from the city to certain events. And whilst there's specific data probably shouldn't be talked about because it's actually really important and it changes every year, it's always fluctuating and it relates to the budget, so we can't talk about it specifically, that concept is what this resolution hopes to address. And I think with better analysis of the consumer spending and economic data that we're now extracting, we should be able to make better decisions and also respond to criticism from the community from time to time about whether our events are actually generating an economic impact. I think everyone believes that we are an event city and there is a significant economic impact, but now we should be able to report back to them exactly where that impact is happening. When an event is held at Carrara, at the wonderful sports centre there's no doubt that people stay in Surfers Paradise and Broadbeach and other locations, and we'll be able to track that. And I think this reporting, this resolution that addresses that reporting, should give every ratepayer confidence that we're serious about continuing to be an event city, but also helping businesses understand where that economic impact is occurring when events are held.
So, okay, debate is closed. And we'll put the vote. All those in favour of the motion on the screen. That is carried. No one against? No, that's all good. Thank you, councillors. There being no more business, declare the meeting closed. 15:22. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
So thank you.